Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today, I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is a special call workshop meeting of the Commissioners Court of Hood County, Texas. Today is Thursday, June the 30th, 2022. It's 9:01 a.m. and we're in the Annex 1 meeting room at 1410 West Pearl Street in Granbury, Texas. The purpose of this meeting is this workshop meeting is to discuss the necessity and feasibility to expand the jail in Hood County. No action will be taken. Commissioner Wilson.
Okay. The current facility was built in 1995 with a capacity of 192 beds, of which 20 were allocated for female inmates. Since 2000, Hood County is required to transport inmates to various other detention centers all over Texas on a daily basis due to our inability to accommodate the ever-growing number of offenders requiring incarceration. This has come at a tremendous cost to Hood County. For the time frame of October 1, 2012 through June 7 of 2022, Hood County has paid a minimum of $4,246,072.39 to other counties to house our inmates. Over the 5-year period of January 1 of 2017 through December 31 of 2021, Hood County paid a total of $1,749,080, which is a yearly average of $349,816 just paying to out-of-county, other counties to house our inmates. The calculations only reflect the housing fees paid to other counties. These numbers do not include the costs associated with transport, the transport officers, vehicles, maintenance, fuel, meals as required. If the associated costs are considered, it increases the yearly average to approximately $900,000 a year. And given the information from Sheriff Deeds, total cost of transporting inmates to and from for a 1 year is $541,741.03, which validates the $900,000 per year. Based on the provided time frames with a start to finish schedule of plus or minus 40 months, the average equals to an additional cost outlay to the county of at least $3 million. This also does not take any consideration of any increases in the housing costs imposed by other counties or transport officers' salaries, vehicles, expenses. So that's where we're at. And to my knowledge, this is the third time that this issue has been addressed in the last 22 years by the court. And it's time that we move forward and get additional space where we can get additional accommodations where we're not shipping them all over the state. There is certain jail standards issues that Eric will address regarding what happens once we go over the 200 bed capacity as far as Texas Jail Standards Commission. But that's why we're here, is to start this discussion again.
Yeah, so going off of what's required after you have 200 or more beds in a facility, you have to have an infirmary. This infirmary includes workstations for the nursing staff, certain special cells that have to be within that area that will keep them from any disease or whatever it might be. But any jail built that's 200 or more beds, I mean, that's a gimme when it comes to having an infirmary. What we have now is just a medical room. It does not possess any of these special housing cells for inmates to be in. So we're talking about expanding off of the current jail, and that's something that will have to be very much considered as having an entire infirmary area for inmates that are in need.
What additional staff goes with that?
So the 1 to 48 ratio is what jail standards requires us to have for one officer per 48 inmates. So depending on your population. It's not depending on how many beds you have, it's depending on how much population you have.
No, I meant specifically for the infirmary.
Oh, so, if you have a few inmates in there, I mean, it's just them being checked on periodically, just like any other inmate is checked on 30 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever it might be. Additional staffing for officers-wise would just be based on the total population. Nursing-wise, again, 24/7 nursing, most likely higher licenses with RN, LVN, if not BSN, etc. Right now, we have a paramedic and an EMT that's currently there. We would most likely require a higher license that would be there full-time to take care of those inmates. As for the serious details and all of that, I don't have it at the moment.
We were
As for
told,
officers.
we were told a while back when we asked jail commission about that, well, I think the last time they were here and we got inspected, that when we go over 200 in population that we can hold in the jail, like we're talking about, we're good to go with our contract with the doctor, and we just need to try to get 24/7 coverage, which we're down, we're trying for 4 people, 12-hour shifts, and we're down 1 right now, but they said under that doctor contract that we're good even then after we get bigger.
Okay, so there's no additional doctor cost involved with going bigger and no additional, well, I mean,
Your bigger
the
cost would be
nursing
the more
requirements.
inmates they see because of how big the jail is, but as for having more than one contracted doctor, then you're not gonna have that, we're good with what we have.
So we've got
As long as we have a doctor.
Yeah, we've got a contracted doctor and a contracted dentist, so that, when it comes up for renewal, that'd be the only time it might go up. And if we're gonna be required to have RNs or LVNs, we've been able to get by with less than that because the doctor approved it.
Just the transportation, cost alone is in the $541,000 a year. That's just for the 6 transportation officers and, the expenses of doing that. In the past, there's been actual prisoners taken all the way to post, and by the previous administration, if I'm not mistaken. There's some of the other areas, McClendon County, which is Waco, and that's recent being in the last 8 years. So if you look at what we're paying out on a daily basis, because it is daily, that's where these numbers come from. This spreadsheet here is from auditor's office, and it goes by county by day. And that's where the $4,246,000 come from. That's just from October 1 of 2012 to June 7th of 2022. And again, those numbers do not reflect the transportation cost and the salaries for the transport officers and the expense. So, we're continually throwing money out to other counties when we've got the space at the jail location to add the additional facilities there and be able to move forward, at this point.
The other problem that we're coming up against here recently in the last year, even a couple of years, is Somerville County, Erath County, Brown County, who we have the contracts with at this time. And there's been times when they called and said, hey, you gotta come back and get your prisoners because we don't have enough room. Then we just hope that we can make it work out and shuffle them around. So one of these days they're gonna all say, we don't have the room and we're gonna have to go farther out to try to find places to house them. And don't know what those costs would be, and we'd have to work on more contracts. Over the years, I've tried to get contracts with Tarrant County. They don't have the manpower. They got the bed space, but they don't have the manpower to cover extra inmates. So that's a commissioner court issue with them. Years ago, we had a contract with Jack County. The McLennan County deal, that went away because they had so many problems with the private company that was running the jail. That company had so many problems, they had so many lawsuits that Johnson County went away from them also, and so it's getting harder to find bed space.
Yeah, and off of McLennan County, you know, they said we could keep housing our inmates there, but they would raise our price to $75 a day, compared to the $50 a day in Brown County, $45 in Somerville and Erath. So the cost to house out could go up significantly in certain locations depending on where we go. Somerville County has 52 beds total. Erath County 144. Brown County has the same amount of beds, 192. So obviously the overpopulation issue is scattered across the entire state. I mean, every conference I go to, that's the number one thing that's been brought up is we've got too many inmates. We don't have enough officers. And so when we're trying to house these inmates out, these other agencies, you know, Somerville and Erath and Brownwood, they don't have enough space to house our inmates. And when the count goes from, and I'll give an example, 3 weeks ago I had 29 inmates go to prison, which was awesome. That was fantastic. It really helped us a lot. But in 7 days, that number went right back up to the exact same. So I got rid of 29 and I gained 29 in 7 days. And then we're right back where we were. Obviously this county is growing significantly and it's not going to stop. And we do not have the structure and housing for all these people coming to jail. And we have nowhere to take them. There's no room anywhere else. Because I try every day.
How many personal recognizance bonds have you issued this year? Do you have any idea?
Probably about 15 that I've done this year, and that's pretty risky when I'm doing that.
Right.
And I've done some big ones. In the past, I've done them because of health reasons, just to get them out of the jail so they can get the help they need, and on their nickel, not ours. Judge Buffkin's done some of the other judges have done some, but yeah, I've had to do some too. So.
Right.
Yeah, I've worked really well with Judge Buffkin, Judge Messina, to get these inmates into court. Last week, Judge Messina helped me out with getting a lot of individuals out there for just misdemeanors, non-violent misdemeanors, that is, and they were able to work plea deals for time served, etc. And they all went to court last week, so I got a handful of our misdemeanors out of the jail, but as of yesterday, I had just as many as I had last week in the jail for misdemeanors. So obviously your non-violent misdemeanors, and some of the things that I've talked to the jail commission about, you know, the first thing they ask me, and it's not something, you know, if you need to be in jail, you need to be in jail, we understand that. But the number one thing they ask me is, are you doing PR bonds for your non-violent offenders for misdemeanors? Are you doing PR bonds for your non-violent felonies, for drugs and etc.? You know, that's what other counties are doing. I don't want to go that route. You know, they need to be incarcerated, they need to be incarcerated. But if we continue to have the population that we have, and it's not going to get any better, we're going to be put in non-compliance. And that's what all this boils down to, is we're not going to have the housing for these inmates, and the state's going to come in and see that, and they're going to see the structure that we have currently and the condition that it's in, and they're going to shut it down. And the last thing that we want to happen is, one, is that we're going to get put in non-compliance, and two, they're going to tell us that we're going to have to move all the inmates out of that facility because it is not in good enough condition to house them. Now you're looking at 192 inmates that have to be housed elsewhere. So you're looking at that cost. And I've been here since 2012, and this has been a constant issue since I've been here. It's been a constant issue since however long we've been housing inmates out of the county, but it's just getting worse and worse. And that jail is getting older and older and older. And it's going to happen. It's just a matter of when. And do we step up and get ahead of that, or do we allow it to happen?
And the condition of the jail, the maintenance that's required, Jay Riley has a full-time, technician there. That's his only job, is to maintain that jail.
That's correct.
On a daily basis. That's his work assignment, is that. And he's, having seen some of the things he's having to do, he's more than earning his keep on that one, because it is a challenge sometimes with what they've got in there that they have to work with.
Our biggest challenge right now is how obsolete some of the equipment is.
Okay?
There's only 1 or 2 manufacturers for locks, and so when we have a lock problem, we can't, you know, because it's all automated. A lot of times we're sending old parts back, getting them refurbished and getting them back. That takes time. The other thing is there's just a lot of stuff we can't get any longer that, you know, it's getting harder. Stuff's getting older.
And this, you know, this effort is not to, you know, get rid of the current facility. This is addition to, you know, additional beds of somewhere in the neighborhood of 200 to 220 bed add-on. Because once we grow over that 200 bed, as he stated already, we got those other requirements, but that, you know, will eliminate having to have people out of county, and also at some point would put us in a position to house inmates from other counties and actually make some money back from that aspect of it. But right now, you know, the situation is critical because if, as Eric stated, if we go and we get deemed non-compliant, then all 192 have to be moved out at that expense. And that's going to be millions of dollars at that point.
And expanding is one thing. I'm the fan of expanding off the current facility. And the reason is the condition that it's currently in. So I'm going to real quick jump into that real fast and just show some examples of the conditions of the facility. I will say that the interior of the structure is not in good shape. We recently started painting the facility on the inside and it looks pretty good. But just because we put makeup on it doesn't mean it's nice on the inside. So I have a few pictures. Actually, I have quite a lot of pictures for examples of these. Mark is the one that's constantly having to fix these problems. So what you see here is what he deals with on a daily basis, after hours when he has to be called because we have a flooding issue or whatever it might be. And mind you, when you see this facility and what's within it, you're going to say, is that sheetrock? Yeah, it's sheetrock. Whatever reason why there's sheetrock in a jail, I can't tell you that, but that's how it was built. So if you have any questions throughout the pictures, maintenance questions, obviously Jay, Mark, they can fill you in on more in regards to that. So obviously this is the pipe chase. So this is where all your plumbing is located within the jail, throughout the jail. Yes, that sheetrock that has either gotten wet or has busted out and has fallen.
What would jail standards think of that if they seen that?
That wouldn't be good. We'd be non-compliance. That's what would happen. Obviously, these issues are being addressed and maintenance has been working on them. So.
And some of this in the pipe chases, there's nothing to put that back to.
I can help with that. I mean, that's a piece of sheetrock. I mean, let's not
Right.
let's not make this into a big deal. You put a piece of board up there from stud to stud, or joist to joist there, and you screw the thing back on. That's not. I mean, that's not a huge deal.
Well, and I'll go into detail on how that happened, and make that up there and was able to push it out. So,
Not that.
the fact of having sheetrock down in those areas, if things like that happen, they're able to easily get up into the ceiling or get out, and that's obviously not what we want.
Okay, yeah, that's
so. Is there more into the pipe chase? Obviously, it's being fixed with a towel. Go back to that.
Are the inmates allowed into the pipe chase?
Oh no.
Okay, so that's, you guys can get out.
This is
Yeah, inmates.
You're right.
So that's one of the vents within the pipe chase?
No, that's behind the dryer.
Oh, okay, so that's in the laundry room. To ensure lint doesn't fly out everywhere, it's covered up with a towel.
This is above the dryer where, of course, the roof's been fixed now, but from the rain, it leaked all the way through the sheetrock and started to pool it.
Are we repairing the roof now?
It's
Yeah, we're
complete.
done.
It's been complete, so this is prior to the roof being repaired?
Yeah, all the sheetrock that's in there, it's already wet.
It's just the
Yeah.
aftermath damage of how it was, so
Right.
thank you very much for getting us a new roof.
Okay.
This right here is in bookings where inmates are showered before they're housed. Mark had to go in there and flex seal that because on the back side of that wall, officers are working in water. It's leaking out of that shower under the wall into the booking area on the floor.
This is an old picture. We've recently repainted it and sealed it, and it looks a whole lot better.
This is Mark's favorite room. This is the violent cell.
So Mark, this material that these violent cells are made out of, it's a special material that is required by jail standards. And ordering this material to patch it is quite lengthy, is it not?
Yeah, as far as we know right now, there's only 2 people that handle that, and just trying to even get stuff to repair that is almost impossible.
Obviously, this material's been in there since the jail was built.
Is that what you call the rubber room?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I've actually looked at redoing the whole thing, and it's pretty expensive.
Don't know how that happened, but there's a hole in it somehow.
Yeah.
And that's the floor.
So patchwork goes a long way, but
We
That's
patched-
actually-
we have
patchwork is
individuals
full
that,
Like seal.
Yeah, well,
that will end up tearing it up
they'll pull
after
it
it's
up.
patched.
That, as you can see, there's several patches there around that. That's kind of an ongoing issue. And I think it's 3,000 every time I patch that.
That's what's left after they had to come out and put a new fire panel in.
Okay.
That's what we had to do last year, best I remember.
Yes. This is in the control room where the officer works to watch all cameras and operate the doors.
You can just put the towel back up there. So the size of our IT can hit on this pretty good, but the amount of wiring going through that building, as old as that building is, they've done a lot of work to try to make it work with containing all the wires, etc., to ensure that our control room is operating appropriately, our cameras are working appropriately.
Not long ago, if you notice the 2 pieces of, that's actually drainage pipe, wet pipe. All of that was miles of wire just hanging. When night security come in and put the new servers in there, they were able to actually get a hold of all those wires and put them in that drainage to kind of clean it up a little bit. When you're trying to put new on old, you can only do so much.
And it's showing you the amount of wiring that's within the facility.
And all of it's just sitting on that ceiling that's just hanging by wire.
Another image of the pipe chase. Where's this at?
This is just pictures of the lights in the cells. It's kind of hard to tell, but if you look against the ceiling, they're hanging. They're not, I mean, Mark, I don't know, Mark's probably put a ton of screws in that jail trying to keep that stuff up there. sheetrock has just been leaked on from the roof so long that it's getting to where it won't hold screws.
No, it's not only that, in between that light, there's a piece of plexiglass.
Well, I took pictures of the ones where that's fallen to. I don't know where that picture came from. I didn't take it.
That's a pipe chase, looks like a shower.
That's the lights again. And if you'll notice, looking at those lights, they're not flat, because the ceiling's sagging. We'll get to a tank here in a minute, it's really bad. See, that's where the plexiglass is not touching.
So that is a hose that is connected to another pipe down the pipe chase
And it's connected
to
a
lead it
phone.
to lead it to a drain to drain properly by funnel.
Yeah, but that's old. Those have been replaced.
Yeah, what we do on that, that's all copper welded pipe, so we have to do that when one starts leaking until we can do the repair.
And all those, they've all
And
been
it's
replaced.
pretty expensive, so.
Well, none of these pictures were taken to point fingers at me, right?
Yeah.
Because I know how, well, Mark used to be 6 foot tall. That is, if I'm not mistaken, a vent pipe for the sewer.
That's a sewer pipe, I believe, with a vent on it.
But it goes
Yeah.
up to
It
the
goes
ceiling.
up through the ceiling, that's correct.
You can see how
And a
How
lot
old
of
and
times,
rusty
we put
these
them
pipes are.
Well,
flexible,
that's how you gotta get.
that's how
in
you get down in there,
the Snake in there. to
snake
get
'em
around
out.
the plug.
so we'll take that off, pull that aside, snake it.
the conditions of the pipes are.
A lot of those lights were retroed, it looked like,
Bill 95.
after they were put in, then they went back in, or somebody
Yeah,
just took
that's
angle
what I
iron
was
and
gonna-
welded it up there and put,
This right here this is in one of our 24-man cells,
D-tank.
D-tank, and when I first hired in, the lights in these cells were just like in a business, they were outside the ceiling. They were all mounted to the sheetrock. Tim Flowers wanted them recessed. Well, that's a good idea, but above this cell is I-beam. Well, he couldn't recess them because under that I-beam was the light, so he notched the I-beam to get the room. Now this ceiling is falling down, and they've had to jack that up and anchor a piece of angle line in there to keep it from being on the floor.
That's in a cell.
There's 24, about 24.
What's the ceiling? Is that drywall on top?
Yep.
okay, so what you've got a layer of drywall, then you've got a layer of, for a lack of a better term, it's like flashing, it's metal over that, and then everything's suspended up to the roof. And so when the structure was messed with, lost some of that stability,
Straight.
and that was put up to hold that edge, because it would, if the sheetrock doesn't go over the top of the wall, so it had to have something. There's nothing to tie to.
And if you go in this tank and look at it, side to side, I don't know, 6 inches different in the middle.
Yeah, it's off. I don't,
Put tape on it from
Sagging.
sagging.
it sagged a little. I don't know when that was put up. That was before I got here, but it works. I don't know how they, obviously they lagged it into the brick.
Well, best I remember, they put a 2x4 on a jack. Mark, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Jacked it up till it wouldn't go anymore, and then they drilled holes in the block, and then put those
Angle iron.
drive anchors in it
Yeah.
to hold it up there. And it's not just in this tank. that's where the ceiling is coming off there. There's no inmates in that area. It's just
All of the overhead structure in that jail is basically suspended. I mean, there's from the roof. If you get up above the roof in the jail, you're gonna have 4 to 5 feet before you even get to the roof. But we can't even walk on it, so the problem is when you have a problem in the middle of a cell, you gotta do it from the bottom. You can't get up on there and walk around.
Because it's just drywall.
And yeah, well, there's metal there. You won't really go through it, but you'll break the sheetrock.
this right here is behind that same tank. Years ago, that was all the black sewer pipe, the original piping. And remember who the fire inspector was? He was a younger guy before Larry. He went back there, and this pipe was so rotten, he got a hold of before Jay and told him this needed to be fixed. Their original fix was industrial saran wrap, and they just wrapped all the pipes about 4 inches thick and walked away from it.
That's not how we operate now, obviously. But
And then finally, they got somebody with intelligence, and they got.
so a little bit of perspective, I'll read off of here. So from May 2019 to today, about 405 requests for some type of fix within the jail has been submitted through the maintenance facility. That also may include IT work within the camera systems or computer systems. So 405 requests since May of 2019. 230 of those requests are plumbing related. These came from one requester. There are multiple individuals that request these things and have their own account for this facility. It was facility, I don't know what it's called now. But 230 of those were plumbing. From 2016 to present, 255 requests of some type of fix within the jail had been submitted, and 182 of those were plumbing, and that was from another requester. I personally, from 2016 to 2019, one of my main jobs was to put in this information, what was wrong within the jail weekly. I don't have access to my account to see exactly how many submissions I did between those years, but I can obviously get them, but they were a lot. Mark can attest, I'm sure, how many requests he got. And a lot of the times, there are things that Mark sees that needs to be changed and fixed, and he fixes them on the spot and lets us know afterwards. He has a lot of initiative in regards to fixing things on the spot. So obviously this breaks down to there is a lot of plumbing problems within the facility.
This right here, there's several pictures of this, because it's throughout the whole jail. That is, like the one in front of the female tank up by booking, it's a gray water drain, Mark.
Yep.
It is busted or something underneath the slab, and it is now pushing up through and breaking the floor all over the jail.
Well, one of the things is every bit of the piping in this is old technology, totally old. Everything, you don't do none of this today. Every bit of the sewer, every bit of the piping, all the vents, they're all cast. And so we put a lot of patches and stuff like that on it. Nothing is, none of it's really PVC except for the only PVC you see is the PVC we put in. And it's hard to adapt it, but
That's happening in the tanks, especially in front of the shower. The few tanks we have that do have metal roofs, the shower steam gets on it, just like your house. It rusts, and those with sheetrock roofs above the shower is not even green sheetrock, it's just normal sheetrock for the wall.
there's no kind of dehumidification at all in the jail.
So this is what happened because of that. And we fix it. You know, we can scrape it, we can kilt it, we can repaint it, that's fine. Also understand these tanks have a maximum of 24 inmates each tank. So there are times where we would have to remove those inmates and put them temporarily somewhere else within the facility to be able to fix these problems. Well, if we're so full on population, I have nowhere to put these inmates. I might be able to put them in a recreation yard and they can play handball or basketball for an hour, but I can't keep them in there that long, especially with the heat. And so we're pressed on time when it comes to fixing the internal cells because of having to remove inmates and to get in there to be able to fix these issues.
This is where,
Is that the metal type material
Yeah.
you were talking about
Yes,
as well,
sir.
the sheetrock?
it's like
That's
valley
it.
metal. That is where Mr. Young actually made it through that.
So this is
Yeah, I
looking
understand.
up a shower. So this is in a cell, a 24-man tank, in the shower looking up at the ceiling. And the amount of steam and moisture had broken up that, and it was not very difficult. Now, it was not this pulled back. We had pulled that back after we had noticed it. But he put enough in where his body could get up through that.
Didn't he use a broom handle or something to get up there?
To break it up, he did break up the sheetrock.
That's been the biggest problem with the jail, with suicides in my single bed. For the problem people, they can move their cot over and get to the vent and tear up their mattress, tie it off around their neck and strangle them, lean down into it and try to strangle themselves, and some have been successful. They needed to be higher ceilings in that jail, but why they build them like that, I guess, fast and cheap, so they build them that way, and the sheetrock itself. So the other cells, everything is all sheetrock, so if the inmate can get to it, he's gonna try to tear it up, or in that one case, he tried to get out, but got stuck and came back in, so we didn't have an escape that day, but that's a dirty word, I shouldn't have said that. But, I shouldn't have said that. So, why they put sheetrock in the ceilings, you know, if they would have put them up another 4, 5, 6 foot higher, that might have been helped a little bit, but they didn't. So inmates can try to get to that and tear up different things or try to hang themselves.
This is behind booking in the property room. Same thing, we're trying to go to the floor and they had to go in and put the hang iron.
I believe that was the first ceiling that started coming down. And then that one in the back 24-man tank was the second one that started coming down. That's been a few years back, 5 or 6, 7 years back.
Yeah, because it was right after Jackie when we had a different inspector, so yeah, it was fine.
Yeah. So maintenance has done a fantastic job of trying to deal with it on a day-to-day basis, but it's falling apart faster than a couple people can keep it going, so,
Needs a major facelift.
yes.
Major.
Have we ever had anybody in professionally take a look at it, see what it would take to renovate the whole thing?
I think
And
the last time that we talked about expanding it, they talked about, you know, building whatever they were going to build off of it, moving the inmates into there, and then redoing what we currently have.
Right.
Obviously,
But
it's.
they didn't do a cost on it.
I just think with the plumbing and the way it is and underneath the floors, I'm not a professional in regards to this stuff, but I know y'all are in it all the time and
You know,
can it even handle, I don't know.
I think the last time we had a meeting, my thoughts on the deal is have it looked at by an engineer, because some of those things we can fix. The problem is we're starting to get cracks in the walls. There's no consistency on how the building was built, so as you can see, them are haydite blocks, you know, that are hollow. Some walls are hollow, some are filled. It's hit or miss. We never know till we stick a drill bit to it what it's gonna be. So I'm suspecting that some of the walls that are cracking and separating and I don't know this, I'd have to check, but I'm thinking they're hollow. So, you know, they're just the brick and they're shifting. There's no solid structure there to them. And, you know, there's no rebar in any of the bricks. Even the ones that they poured solid, there's no rebar, nothing. We can still drill through them. And we've literally found holes in the brick into the pipe chase in one cell. I don't remember which cell that was, but we have no idea how the guy did it, but he got a hole in through it. Not a big one, not big enough to escape or anything like that, but it's just kind of B5, yeah. It's just, when you see that, you're like, how did they do that? You know, and the concrete is starting to come apart, so we've even got calls. We've had to kind of fire drill it, go in there. We'll get a call and the drain's been pulled out of the floor, and there will be an indentation in the floor. Well, you can't have an inmate with a round brass piece of metal carrying it around, you know. And so we'll go back in and cement that back in and fix it. But you know, those drains are just screwed in, and they are security screws, but trust me, they're pretty handy with what they can figure out to do. And they'll remove those drains, and that's a scary thing to me.
Almost like they can tear down a house with a paper clip.
Yeah, and like every screw in there that Mark puts in, you know, he makes sure he puts in the security screws, but I'm just amazed. I can't get a screw out of a piece of wood, and they can get one out of a piece of metal that doesn't have a slot in it. So that goes back to the lower ceiling, you know. And another thing, just so y'all remember, I was in court on the air conditioners. Well, it wasn't an air conditioner problem, it was a heating problem. Remember when I had all the cracked exchangers? Well, obviously we didn't pay attention to what was going on. Part of that's on me, but the beds, the bunks in the big cells, and that's primarily where those units went out, their bunk was under the vent. Well, they'd either be warm or they'd be hot or cold, so they would start stuffing stuff in there. Well, in the wintertime, that causes more heat to be on them exchangers because it's not getting out. So that's an ongoing issue with the inmates of stuffing. They'll take toilet paper and get it wet, stuff it all the way around there, and now they got a comfortable bunk.
The rest of the people
are
uncomfortable.
So we lowered our velocity of our air coming through our exchangers, and they started cracking. And that's why I wound up changing those units. They were still working. It was just, we couldn't let carbon monoxide into the space.
And about 16, 18 months ago, you know, the county held a workshop prior to me coming on court. And, you know, that was, you know, with a company that was talking about a 220 bed add-on, additional, not, you know, keeping what we've got. And then that was another, and the cost of that at that time was estimated somewhere between 8 and 10 mil. Of course, with the price of increase, you know, in supplies and materials and labor and everything now, I'm not sure what it would be, but I think we need to, in my opinion, we need to go down that road and, you know, get that number. You know, or, you know, once, and then the other thing, again, correct me if I'm wrong, once we go over the 200 bed and we've got the medical facilities that we're required to have, we also puts us in a position to house, you know, any federal inmates if they need somebody to house. Is that correct?
I mean, through contract.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
we don't have to house anybody other than our own inmates if we don't want to.
Right.
But if we want to, we can.
Yes, okay, so there's, you know, that potential of, you know, having, you know, some contracts to get to house other inmates once we get the additional capacity and not have to ship them out of county.
So a little bit more, the way the jail is set up, so we're a maximum security facility. So what maximum means is it's based off classification for each individual in the jail. So you have minimum classifications, medium, and maximum classification inmates. Of the 8 male population housing units, which is a total of 144 beds, so in our main population, 4 males only is 144 beds. Only one of them, one of those cells, which is 24 beds, is assigned as a minimum cell. So anybody that comes to jail that's a minimum or a medium classified inmate, they can go into this cell. Minimums, that's where they only can go. They can't go anywhere else in the jail because I have them, every other tank is a maximum tank. And minimums cannot be housed with a maximum classification. A minimum can be housed with a medium, and a medium can be housed with a max, but a minimum cannot be housed with a maximum inmate. So we only have 24 beds in the entire facility that is dedicated to minimum classified inmates. I don't have the number of how many minimum classified inmates we have right now. It does come down to it where we have to override classifications. We're only allowed a certain percentage based off your population with the amount of overrides you can do for classifications, and it's normally making a medium inmate or a maximum inmate into a medium inmate, or a medium inmate to a minimum inmate, classification-wise. And that's just the male housing. That's the main population male housing. I only have 20 beds for segregation. If I had 40, they'd all be full. Obviously, there's behavioral issues within the jail facilities. There is protective custody. That's a big one. I only have 12 beds that are available for those that are sex offenders or serious charges of that nature that have to be separated for their safety. I only have 12 that are available, and I need a whole lot more than that, unfortunately. And then another 12 that is dedicated for protective custody purposes. And then the rest would be in the segregation cell. Obviously, segregation needs to be for behavioral issues or administrative problems if they can't get along with any others. And that's where we run into a lot of issues with housing, is these other counties have very strict guidelines on who they'll house for us. They're looking for angel inmates that don't have any problems whatsoever. No medical, no mental issues, behavioral, whatever it might be, they won't take them. And so when you have an inmate that can't get along with anybody, he's been to every single classified tank that he is at, or she is at, and still nothing, now where do I put them? One, if it's a female, I can't put her into a segregation cell because I only have 20 specifically for men. I don't have any cells that are single for females. So where does she go? The only place I have is in holding. You're only allowed to house somebody in holding for 48 hours before they need to be taken out. And I can tell you that we have had to house a lot longer than 48 hours because there is absolutely nowhere to put these individuals. And we try very, very hard to either take care of their charges that they're dealing with, and we have to go that route just because they can't be housed anywhere, or another facility if need be, if they'll even take them. And again, just based off of, and like the sheriff said earlier, they'll call us and say, come get your inmate. We don't have any beds, or come get your inmate because they upset one of my officers. You know, they don't want to deal with an inmate that's causing problems with them if it's not their inmate and they don't have to, so we'll just have to go pick them up. For females wise, the jail was built for 20 beds for females. We had to take away 8 or 12? 8 beds from a male cell to dedicate that to females. So we have 28 female beds, only built for 20, but we have an extra one, and it's located in the booking area, so it is still out of sight and out of sound of male inmates, because that's the law, is jail standards. You have to keep females out of sight and sound of male inmates, housing-wise. So when we're up after 28 beds, we have got nowhere to put them. And these other counties are either full and can't take them. And I'm housing not just females out of county, but males as well, because our male count's high. And I can tell you from, in a 6-month period, January 1st, 2022, our in-house count was 170. Mind you, I have 192 beds. So our in-house was 170, which doesn't seem bad, but I had 32 females. I only have 28 beds. So already I'm having to figure out where to take these females. The male population wasn't that. But as of today, 158 males, 32 females, and 190 total. So I got 2 beds in my jail that are available, and those aren't female beds.
A couple of weeks ago, we were up to 60 females in the system. Then I think a week later, we finally got down to about 50, but most of the time, they've been going in that upper range, so that's why we gotta have so many of them out of county. We could go on all day about the problems and all that, but all they're doing is maintenance is getting tougher, the population is increasing.
And, okay, one other thing, you know, you've got some that come in for the weekend, you know, and what's the number on, that you're getting every week, you know, that are coming in on the weekend?
The weekenders, Judge Messina does a good job not overcrowding us throughout the week, but on the weekends, yeah, we have 6.
4 or 5.
Okay.
I think one of them just finished.
Okay, it's been, 6 to 8, and now it's down a little bit lower, but, so those come in Friday night and stay through the weekend, plus the extra increase from the weekend. So like this weekend will probably be a busy weekend for DWIs, public intoxications, things of that nature. Public intoxications, DWIs, usually they'll spend the night in jail, get locked out the next day.
Yeah, same for Class C tickets. They may get arrested on that Class C ticket, but they'll get arraigned either the same day or the day after, and they're released as well. The judges, the JPs, the municipal judge, they all work really well with us, and if we need somebody to arraign that day, we'll give them a call, and they don't have a problem coming up and arraigning them for those purposes of we don't have the space for that individual, they don't need to be there.
Yeah, past courts too were upset with the city saying they need to pay for their stuff. Well, Judge Hines does a great job. They get arrested for Class C stuff, they'll come spend the night in jail, and then they'll get out in the morning, they'll be on a payment plan or something like that. So the Class C stuff that the city might have is really pretty minor. We give them a free breakfast in the morning, so that costs the county $1.50 to $2 or something, they're out the door. So the problem is if a Granbury citizen commits a Class B offense or higher, then that's a county problem at that point, or a district court problem. So it's really not a city thing like past courts have thought. Everybody asked me, how are we going to start moving people over to the new building down there off the loop? Well, no, that's a Granbury Police Department office space. It doesn't include any holding cells, anything like that. So the jail is up the street. So.
And in looking at the timeline, that AGCM has produced from the time we start, which are kind of outlining that right now, but go through to the point of occupancy of a facility is plus or minus 40 months. So given that number and given the past number, the history of the numbers that we have already expended in 40 months, we're going to expend at least another $3 million before the facility is even ready to house inmates. And that's with no increase in salaries, increase in vehicles, or costs. That's just based on past history. That's another $3 million. So now we're at the 8.5, $9 million before if we started today. That's the timeline. That's where we're at. We've got to figure out how to move forward on this. And
what was that number?
Huh?
What was that number?
8.5 to 9 mil.
No, I mean, what was the justification of that number?
The
I missed some of that.
past history of what we've already paid, the 5 years, the last of 2017 through 2021, which was an average of $349,000, not counting the transportation annual of $541,000. So
that number's way up.
$900,000 per, right at $900,000 per year. And
well, that's
do
buying
that
6 Tahoes a year. We're not buying 6 Tahoes a year, so that
No.
that's already $150,000 high. We've got to have transportation officers anyway. So I mean, you can't put that entire cost into what it's costing us to house outside of county. I mean, I'm not, no matter what we do on this, we're not coming out making money on this thing. It's not, we're not improving our situation financially, no matter how we try to spend this, that's not happening. It costs money to house inmates. We're not going to make anything. If there was money to be made on it, heck, Tarrant County would find the
And
staff.
I'm not doing it to, to make money, I'm doing it to save
No,
money.
no, I understand that, but I mean, I think looking at this financially, it's going to cost. We're not gonna improve our financial situation by building a jail.
Could be. Do you know what's gonna happen in 4 years? You know, if things turn bad and Brown County turns it down, that's the unknown here. That's the unknown. We don't start now, and if you don't think it's gonna get any better, it's gonna get worse. And then jail standard shuts us down because our jail does. I mean, we need to start, and it's not a financial gain. No, there's no question about it. But I think you got to protect yourself against financial loss.
Well, these are the things that we have to look at and consider. But I think that, and I mean that, I think the inmates are going to go in and tear stuff up. It don't matter how old that thing is. I think they make an effort to.
Well, they have nothing else better to do 24 hours a day to figure out, what to mess with, because the board, obviously the structure of the building, depending on how it's designed, will prevent a lot of what's happening right now. So.
Yeah, I think we need to determine, somebody professional to tell us, this, you can't save this building. They need to tell us that. I don't think there's anybody here who got the expertise to tell us.
What's the solution on saving it?
Yeah, what's it cost to save it?
Something, regardless, has to happen.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And you got, I just want to confirm this,
Yes.
you got on here that the daily cost to house an inmate here is $57.64 a day, is that correct?
Yes.
Part of the reason that's up so high in the last couple of years is because of the extra transport people. It's figured by the bed space, the jail budget.
I have to look at the population report to see how.
Yeah, there's
So the question I've got for Commissioner Wilson, and then all the numbers that you just gave us, have you backed that number out of it? Because if they stay here, we're going to pay that much whether they're, in other words, the cost of taking inmates out of the county, you've got a transportation cost and the cost to house them at another county. The question I've got is, have you backed, if they stayed here, it'd be $57.64 a day, so have you backed that out of your total numbers that you've been giving us? Is that making sense?
Yeah, it does. And the other thing, I agree with that. And the other thing is, I think we have to figure, if you build a 200, can you bring down your cost per inmate by building a bigger facility?
We don't know. We don't know.
Will you?
Well, and you said that the $57 a day that's your total number. It's your total cost, your budget, minus the total inmates. So that $57 a day does include the transportation and people outside county too. So that number is not. I would anticipate that number would be slightly lower for housing them here without the transportation.
It's the total jail budget.
Right. So.
And then you got six. In one of these spreadsheets, you've got 6 transportation officers factored into that and their salaries. Is that all they do? Is the 6 is take them outside of county?
They do any type of transport. It's not just taking them. The numbers that were either brought up was just the transportations from our jail to those other counties. That's just those 3 counties in the last year, and that's it. It's not including them having to take, from there to court. But I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about how much it's costing just to transport an inmate from our facility to Somerville to Erath to Brown County in the last year. Is the information that I was able to gather. Which doesn't include y'all should have the paperwork, but it's just transport, not in regard to their salaries and stuff. It was just.
Well, that looks like just standard deduction.
The cost
mileage or whatever. Is that what that? Yeah, 55 cents a mile or whatever. Kind of what that looks like.
So I guess the question is, can we survive the way we are now? I mean, can we? If we can, then leave it alone, if we survive.
What I would love to do is go to Tarrant County and say, what the heck does it take to get you guys to staff up that we can send over there? Because that seems, you know, and then we're not building a building that's on the way to death, because apparently the second you open that door, it's obsolescence at the other end of this road, and it's a.
We send our guys to the Tarrant County Academy where they have theirs. We can send one or two. They have 40 or 50 cadets every month.
And just can't keep the staff.
Nobody can keep it, and if I had to come into work going, I need 10, I would be freaking out, and they're sending 40 or 50 people through it every month.
It seems like it, yeah.
And they're advertising, Tarrant County's advertising daily, you know, to, you know, come join them. And a year ago, when we raised the jailers, you know, fees here to 20, they were at 20 at that point. They are now at 22, you know, and they still don't have enough jailers in Tarrant County.
They gotta pay for their own insurance, and they get a small uniform allowance.
Obviously, financially, Tarrant County is a whole lot bigger than we are in regards to the finances and et cetera.
Yes,
Hey,
Dave.
sorry. No. Question?
Yeah.
No question. First off, let me introduce myself. My name is Dave Strife. I'm a former retired warden of penitentiaries for the last 28 years, or 26 years. Everything from jails to 2,000-bed facilities. And I've also worked for the privates. So the first thing I'd like to address is you're not going to make any money off of any bed. And anticipating right now, I mean, literally, that's what the basis of private corrections is. It's like a vacuum cleaner salesman trying to hustle business. And you're right. You know, Cleburne, Johnson County experimented with having Washington, D.C. inmates shipped in, and within 6 months they shipped them all back out because of all the riots and disturbances. They're gonna send you the worst of the worst, so they don't have to deal with them. So don't even try to even count on that. The last two administrations have been pulling inmates. There's so much federal bed space, immigration space, that don't even count on it. The question that I see here from my experience of the last 20 years is a lot of the things you're bringing up are valid. But the question that I have is what's your anticipated, you're talking about renovating the old jail and adding on to the old jail. So what would be the cost of an internal analysis of all the pictures that I saw? What would be, if you had to get that building back up again to adequately fit to meet jail standards, what would be the anticipated cost? Do you even know that?
No, I don't.
That's number one. Number two, you're right. You need to have an engineer come in and say, is that building even worth saving? I've been in a penitentiary before where the engineer came in and said it would be cheaper to demolish the building and build a new one because you're literally just turning wheels. But without that information internally, you can't even proceed forward because the engineer may come to you and say it's just cheaper. The second thing, or the third thing you have to look at, and I'm cautioning on, is adding on to the jail that already made. I mean, that's not even a discussion until you find out what's going to be done with the old jail, if it's salvageable. The other thing I would ask is, when was your last jail standards audit?
Last year.
What did you pass at?
We passed.
What was your score? It's pass or fail, I think.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, we
Okay,
passed.
so you're pass or fail. So were any of the maintenance issues that were identified, if they were identified, were there any immediate life safety issues?
Life safety, no.
Okay, so your jail's good for another, what is it, 3 years?
Well, yeah, they just changed their, we don't know where we're getting stuff.
Oh, okay,
They
yeah.
just changed it all up. So usually it's every year.
I'm not trying to catch you.
No.
I know all this stuff for 28 years.
Yeah, no, you're good.
So you're really not in immediate need right now because it's 3 years is the average. But you really don't know. They could come in tomorrow.
Yeah, well,
depending on
it's for
if
sure
there's
every
if the
year,
inmates are sending
and
complaints
they just
in.
changed it to,
You know.
it could be every 2 years, depending on the complaints that they receive, depending on your, I don't want to say the words, but the E word, escape, and your suicides and all that. They're going to have to, because jail standards got audited, and they had to make some changes.
Yeah.
And so what's gonna happen is those jails that need more attention, that aren't in compliance, are gonna be probably inspected every 6 months.
Yeah, exactly. They
Those
post
that
a
have been
list of
passing,
failing jails.
like,
Yeah.
for us thankfully, past 13 years, we're probably not gonna be high up on that percentage whenever it's calculated.
So now let's move over to the addition. What is the anticipated design that you're looking at? Because there's nobody in the room that said anything about design, because design is going to majorly affect your cost. For example, single cell, 200 and some odd beds at single cell is going to be 3 times the amount of a dormitory. Are you going to tripod them? Are you going to double space them? Are you going to, are you going to put them in quads? Are you going to put them in a general 100-bed dormitory based off their classification? Because you're right, misdemeanors and you can generally it's pretrial, convicted misdemeanors, and those awaiting sentencing to go to pretrial felons. Right.
And I think that's part of the process that we're about to discuss.
Okay. I didn't know what you guys were.
Yes or no, and I don't know if this is the appropriate place.
It's a good time to talk about it right now.
But Ryan
Yeah, that's because I had a question about it.
Yeah, Ryan Roseborough is here from AGCM, sorry.
No problem.
And has kind of providing us a roadmap for the process to go through. And part of that is an analysis of the current facility, and I'll let him explain that, but that's part of the process, is going through there, if you'd like
Just
that.
one more comment. Have you taken into consideration, it's just not your jail costs that you're looking at, okay? When you start, budgeting this jail or addition. And I'm not saying I'm for it or for against it, I just don't know enough about the plan. You're depending upon, what's your jail population now? Roughly 200, I mean, it's 192?
Right.
Okay. And you're anticipating going up to what? Adding on another 200 some odd beds?
400.
You want to get to 500s beyond 500?
Yeah, no less than 400 total, including what we have now.
Okay, so because my point is, are you
double the capacity?
Are you fixing your cost on trying to stay under that 500 so you don't have to do the full-time medical staff? Or are you going to base the 500 beds and then when you reach that jail population of 500, that's when you're going to start anticipating putting in an infirmary?
No, the
and all those
infirmary
things?
has to be there after 200.
After 200,
We're only 8
okay.
beds away from
All
that,
right.
so
again,
that's inevitable. That's happening.
You're looking at, if you're going to double your jail population, essentially, you're going to end up doubling your jail staff.
Right.
Okay,
Depending
and you're
on
going
the
to be
amount.
doubling up on your medical care.
Correct.
And although, have you factored into that into an anticipated budget? It's not just the jail you're talking about. You're talking about new staff. So you're doubling up on your sergeants, lieutenants, captains, jail administrator. You may need an assistant jail administrator. Again, then you're going to double up on your uniforms, your bunks, your mattresses, your food costs. Now, your food costs should stay about the same. Has that been looked at to factor into the cost of the new jail?
I haven't personally looked at it.
Okay, that's going to add up quite a bit. I mean, I get the numbers Commissioner Williams is talking about transportation, but that's negligible when you start talking about the actual fixed costs. When you start, because I'll give you an option. You can actually outsource your transportation, and that's where you make your money. Not on, if you could. I don't know if you can or not. Instead of outsourcing the beds to your facility, you outsource your transportation services and try a premium dollar to move inmates around on behalf of other counties. That's where you make your money. Anyway, so that's what I'm saying. I think you're kind of jumping the cart before the horse. You got to get that engineer to look at it, the facility, see if it's salvageable, what it's going to cost, the recommendations I guess this gentleman's going to present on the design anticipated. What are we looking at? Single cell, double cell, dormitories, metal buildings, campus style, all these different factors are going to adjust your costs. And a lot of times your costs, if you go to a hardened facility, which most correctional folks, they love the hardened facilities. I'm sure that's what you're looking at. And what I mean that is concrete, minimum double celling. That's the most expensive out there. I mean, that's going to run you a lot of money. Whereas dormitory, metal buildings, campus style, where you can house a whole bunch of number of inmates in a smaller location, it's more cost effective. But I'll let this gentleman jump in right now.
Thank you.
Ready? Yep. Okay. Good morning. So thank y'all for having me, Judge, Commissioners. Pleasure to be here with y'all today. So I was asked just to put together kind of a roadmap of what we would anticipate the process looking like to get y'all where you want to be. So I will put the disclaimer out there. I'm not an engineer, I'm not an architect, I'm not the general contractor. Our role is as your representative, the county's representative. We're your project managers. That's our role. So I'm by no means a jail expert. Y'all have way more knowledge specifically about jails than I'll ever have probably, but I did stay at Holiday Inn Express last night right down the street, so I'm working on it. But with all that said, kind of the process that we outlined, just to kind of walk you through it, the first thing right off the bat, we probably need to start communicating with the TCJS on the facility needs analysis. So we're required to submit that to the TCJS. They can help us with that process as well, so I would anticipate that to be a 1 to 2 month process once you say go.
We've done a couple of those, but
Okay.
it's been a couple of years ago. The information we gave them, they went off old information anyway.
Awesome.
We worked on that in the past.
Okay, so y'all are familiar with that and no issues there. So also I'm going to say the roadmap we put together is plus or minus 40 months. That was my I just threw it at the wall. Okay, that's how the process would typically go. Y'all all know this right now. The construction market is bananas. Every day we don't have a shovel in the ground is a day you're losing buying power, and a day you're able to buy less square footage. So that plus 40 months, we can accelerate that substantially depending on what your own priorities are. Okay? If you want this to be a slow, methodical, thought-through process and you're more concerned with that, we can do that. If you want it to be full throttle, we can do that too, and we can really speed things up a lot. So a lot of this stuff we can do concurrently. In concert with that facility needs analysis, typically we'll start off with the programming phase. So what programming is basically determining what your needs are for the new facility from a high level. That's going to be all the questions you're just asking. Is it going to be single occupancy dorm, double occupancy, how many, medium security, high security, what kind of building type is it going to be, how much admin space, square footage, auxiliary areas, rec space, all that, right? So programming will determine all that. From the programming, that's where you're going to get, this is how many square feet you need, and this is what type of building it's going to be. Very high level, very broad. Once we have that nailed down, then we can determine what it's going to cost, or we can put the budget together for you. So step one is to get the program knocked out, then you have numbers to feed off of. You can put real numbers together and schedule. You can also put a real schedule together at that point. Now, also, I didn't put anything on paper intentionally because I didn't want y'all to hold me to it, but if you have questions on costs or numbers, feel free to ask me, and I'll throw you some numbers just off top of head to give you something to talk about. So if you have questions about costs or those sort of things, let me know. Cost estimates, that kind of stuff.
Do you mean you've got kind of an idea right now, if we said we wanted a 200-bed facility, you could say ballpark, it's gonna be this?
I could ballpark it, yeah, I think I could.
All right. What is it?
Take a shot at it.
Well, so single or I mean,
Well, you
let's
gotta
say,
figure out your
yeah, let's say
design.
let's just say
half and
200
half.
beds. Let's say 200 beds. Would you assume double occupancy average? Or?
Yes.
Okay, so let's just say 100 rooms at 100 square feet each. I think 70 square feet is the minimum for jail standards.
40.
It used to be 40, I think
Well,
it's
you
70.
gotta figure that out between open access areas like day rooms versus
Well, hey, yeah,
single cell.
Yeah, I'll get to all that. But,
There's
so,
a difference in
so
price.
let's just say we did 100 dorm rooms at 100 square feet, right? That's 10,000 square feet, and then we add in 50% for our occupancy space, our corridors, our our showers, admin space, all that, rec area. So that puts you at 15,000 square feet. Again, construction cost per square foot is going to be way higher on this type of facility probably, because what I would recommend to you guys, again, only knowing what I've heard today, you're probably going to want to do a facility that's going to be CMU walls, load-bearing CMU, or tilt wall concrete, something like that. That's going to be, like I'm thinking about psych units. I've done some psych units before, and it's got to be rock solid, right? Nobody, you can't have any opportunity for people to mess around. So I'm just throwing in $800 a square foot for construction cost. That's a lot, but again, it's you know, everything's got to be secure and
Not building hotels
yeah, it's not tamper-proof everything, right? Tamper-proof everything.
on 15,000 square feet?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So that puts you at about $12 million construction cost. Rough, very rough, very, very rough.
Doesn't include doing anything in the old jail.
Does not include anything to the old jail at this point. Now, if we put, you're gonna have soft costs on top of that construction cost, right? Your design fees.
Would that also be greenfield?
This would be, yes, sir.
This would be greenfield?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So you're gonna have soft costs like your architect and engineering fees, your furniture, you know, all that stuff. Once we bake all that in, that's gonna be about, we're gonna go on the low end, 15% there. That's gonna include your cameras, your technology, your IT, all that stuff. So let's put in 15%. That puts you at almost 14 million. Again, that's high because there's also the inflation factor from here to there, right? We think that at some point the market is going to stabilize, but everybody's been saying that for 3 years and it hasn't stabilized. It keeps going up. Everything keeps going up.
Is that just for double occupancy sales, not 24-man dorm?
Yeah, I just ran that just again, throwing something to the wall just to give you something
I'm sorry,
to talk about.
what was that other 2 mil for?
For soft costs, that's your furniture, your technology, IT, cameras, yeah, all that stuff that's not typically included in the construction cost itself. Your bunks.
So is this like when you go on vacation, you figure it up and then just double it?
Not me.
Okay, I'm just making sure.
No, not me.
Just making sure.
No, I do about 20%.
Figure out how much money you need and then just double that?
And you haven't put tips in there yet.
Yeah.
Well, your flexibility, again, I keep pointing it out, it's kind of like you're looking for a car here, but you don't know if you're looking for a Cadillac or a Kia. So he's giving you the highest cost based off the cell structure. You can mitigate that by $1 million, $2 million, or even $3 million, depending upon the style that you're going for. My recommendation is to look at, you know, if I was sitting in your position, I'd be looking at what the expandable rate would be on my anticipated inmate population, and could I get away with a lower cost by moving more of my lower inmates into a metal building, so to speak, you know, construction type deal, like TDCJ uses. You know, that's a lot of what a lot of penitentiaries are going for now. It's a lower construction cost. But until you know what you're looking for, it's really hard for him to come out and say this amount or this amount. It's really hard to try to push a budget that you don't even know what you're looking for yet. The other thing is, are you looking at expanding beyond that 200? You don't want to block yourself into where you've done a square building and there's no way to add on to it other than to the roof. Those are things I'm just trying to educate you on that you need to take into account before you even sit at the table and look at numbers.
So, again, those high-level numbers, right now we're seeing 1% to 1.5% per month construction inflation. Escalation, not inflation. I don't like the word inflation. Escalation. 1 to 1.5% per month. So if we're looking 2 years out before we put a shovel in the ground, that's almost 20%. Right. So we could best that. We could do better than that, and everything could stabilize. But if gas stays at $5 a gallon, we're all in trouble in the construction world, because of course the price of oil and fuel is directly everything we do in construction. Right? It impacts the cost of concrete, it impacts the cost of roofing, it impacts the cost of everything across the board, steel. So that programming exercise, again, high level, if you know what you need and you are dead set on how you want it built and you don't need that programming guidance, you can roll that into the design process and you could bypass that phase completely. So that's an option if speed is time is the enemy right now. So once we get though that square footage, the occupancy, you know, the parameters lined out, we can put a budget together for you that's a little more pointed, a little more zeroed in. Once we get that budget and that milestone schedule put together, again, I've got an item in here for funding. Once you know what the budget is, then you can figure out how you're going to fund the thing. So I've got a little bit of time in here for that. You know, you can do it one of two ways. You can either say, this is how much money we have, make it work, you know, build what you can for that much money. Or you can say, this is what we need, how much money is it gonna cost? So it's function-based budget versus monetary-based budget, if that makes sense. We always want functionality, right? I mean, it's if you build something that's not functional, what's the point? So to me, you always wanna, you know, find the money after you get the budget done. We talk a little bit about in here, once you determine how it's going to be funded, then we have to determine, the commissioners will have to determine how you want to deliver the project, how you want to procure it. You know, there's a lot of different options that the state offers us. Design build is one, where you bring in a contractor and an architect on the same team. That will streamline the process as well. That'll make it much faster. Now, what that does is that takes away some of the creative, some of the design creativity from your end, and you're handing some of that power off to the design build team. But at the end of the day, it's a jail facility, right? This is not something you're worried about creative, you know, creative power.
Let me ask you this, it's like building a house, you know, when you're building a house, I like to get my own architect who's working for me.
Right.
And then I have a contractor who's doing it, and so the architect is looking out for my interest. That's what I want. I don't want somebody on the same team working together. I want somebody protecting the county's interest about knowing what's required by the state, how it's got to be.
Yep.
You know, looking at the numbers about the maximum, the minimum, and security and all that stuff that's on the base. When it comes down to the final deal, isn't that what you want? This is kind of a double check system. I don't want the same people working together on the same team.
So what we would encourage is letting us come back and give you guys a presentation on the delivery methods and the pros and cons of each one. We don't have, you know, every project is different that we manage. There's no one size fits all. Design build, again, one of the disadvantages to that is you're giving that power to the contractor because the architect is working for the contractor. That's not good.
No,
but
that is not good.
But you have us, right? We're your rep. So when you say you want somebody watching out for you, that's what we're here for. So we mitigate a lot of that. You know, we just finished a design build project in McLean and Chisholm where we gave the design build team very strict parameters in their contract. So we eliminated all that woodwork. We eliminated all that obscurity where they can play
So
games.
you had engineers and experts with the jail commission working together, so when you gave all of that to them, they couldn't come back and BS on what you did need and try to sell you on something.
Well, you have when you do the programming early on, you identify those parameters, right? And then those parameters are part of the design build contract.
To your question, Judge, there's in the jail standards, there's a list of requirements that have to be followed for new jail construction. They don't really supervise you on that. What they do is they expect the entity or the agency to comply with that, and then when they come out and do your inspection, they'll tell you either compliant or not. But to your point, yes, you need to have somebody on your side or the county side. But if you go down that road, but then again, I would caution that you need to get somebody that's familiar with building jails, or you're going to run into the same problem you got right now.
Well, let me ask you this. You said that you were a warden at a jail, or warden at a prison that had 2,000 inmates.
Yes, sir.
Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Did you help on the construction of that deal, or did you?
Well, I didn't actually go out there and push a shovel or a wheelbarrow, but what we did was they had security experts, and I'm being one of those, get involved with how the building should look, how it should operate, how we were going to flow it, and then based off those parameters, that's what the construction companies were expected to follow. That's the reason why I was asking. I guess you're the jail administrator?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That's the reason I was asking your jail administrator, because your jail administrator is going to be the best knowledgeable person on the operations, the design, what his facility needs, and then based off those parameters, they design a facility around it.
Where was that prison?
Corpus Christi, the Immigration Customs Enforcement Facility.
Is it still standing?
Yes, sir.
How many years ago was that?
So I've been back now, 12 years.
12 years ago?
Yeah.
Okay.
I retired.
What's the name of the prison?
Corpus Christi Correctional Facility.
Okay.
What is our current square footage of,
That's just one.
remind me?
If you need a list of all the facilities I work at, I can provide
How,
it to you.
how much that entire building is?
You don't know?
No.
Do you know?
I can get that information to
Yeah.
you. I don't have it with me, I'm sorry.
Because one thing I think we need to, I think somebody's alluded to it, but let's just look at this $14 million number. That's just for adding on to what we got, but the question then is, what's the square footage of what we do have, and what are we looking at is it feasible to renovate? And if it is, what are we looking at per square foot for that? Because all that needs to be factored into the equation. And you may be looking at 20 million total by the time you get to that.
So that document that you have in front of you, that on step 2.
The one you did?
Yes, sir, yes, sir. Under the programming exercise, I did include under there a facility assessment on the existing facility.
What's your name again?
Ryan Roseborough.
Thank you.
Yes, sir, I'm the county's representative, owner's representative for projects, construction projects.
This is the group we agreed to hire representatives for the fire department.
Oh,
Expansions,
okay.
that's why we're using them.
Well,
Because we already got a contract with them.
Okay.
All right, and I've got a stupid question. This is a thought that's occurred to me. What about the old jail over here? Can we retro that thing and make it work for anything? There's two, real quick, no.
I don't think it's being the main run in that jail. You make an inmate mad in that cell, they can do this,
Oh.
and you're gonna stay right there until you can get away from it.
I don't think that would ever.
Okay, the question needed to be asked, because I'm like, there's already a hay-dot block building over here. Can we just go put some plumbing in it? Call it good, so.
I haven't seen the facility, so again, just transparency, I haven't been in there, which is a good thing, I guess. But if it was built in '95, I've got to believe that the bones are probably still good enough that you could gut that sucker and for $350, $400 a foot, you could probably do a lot of work in that existing building.
354,
That's
300.
where we're gonna have to get an engineer to come look at it. I've been here since '05, and on the main run, there's a wall that faces north. From the weather, that block wall has been so saturated that inside of it is saturated and those blocks are falling apart.
Yeah, so that's just,
That's just one
Yeah.
north wall it's an exterior wall. It's just the one, so.
we could fix, there's fixes for that kind of stuff. But yeah, we would, like I said, facility assessment would be part of this exercise to get in there and look at it and say, again, we'll put the pencil to the paper, and if it's cheaper to push it over and build a new one, we'll bring you those items.
That's what we need.
So just to kind of walk you through the rest of the process, again, determine how you want to build the facility, competitive seal proposal, that's going to be, just from a high level, competitive seal proposal is going to be your more cost efficient model. Design build is going to be your fastest model, which today, time equals money, right? So that also helps you with cost efficiency. And then construction manager at risk is another model where you bring on the general contractor early and he sits alongside your design team. So
How many of the CMARs do you use for your construction?
Oh gosh.
Most of them?
Yes,
Half of
sir.
them?
Yeah,
Most of them are CMAR?
Well, they all want to be CMR because it's a little bit more, it's construction manager at risk, it's a bit of a misnomer, there's no risk.
No.
So they want to do CM at risk projects.
Yeah.
So it's easy to get that.
Pay mud.
Especially in the market that we're in right now because prices are so volatile. If they're locking in bids on bid day on a competitive seal proposal, they're getting a call 2 weeks later from suppliers saying, hey, your brickwork just went up. And now they're stuck.
He's got to eat.
He's going to eat it. Yeah. So CM at risk right now is a good model for the environment that we're in. But anyway, once you determine the means of procurement and delivery, then we determine how the design and the construction goes in concert. If you want to do competitive seal proposal, we get the architect on board, they design it, and then we bid it out. If you want to do CM at risk, we bring the design team and the CMR on board at the same time, and we let them work together through the whole process to keep the budget reined in, to keep design parameters reined in, all that kind of thing. And if you want to do design build, we just put out one solicitation, we hire both of them under one contract, and off we go. So, so determining how you want to procure the work will play a big part in the timeline of the project. All that said, design of the facility is going to take about 8 to 10 months. I put 10 months on here just mainly because the TCJS at each phase of design, each phase of design development, you have to submit back to the TCJS. And I don't know if they're anything like the rest of the state offices right now.
They definitely are.
Then they're going to be really slow to respond.
We've had a lot of changes in the last year.
Okay, so they're going to be really slow to provide any input or response.
Do you give any help in the counties that you work with for the justification of doing it? It's kind of a question. We're not going to do this to save money.
Sure.
Or make money.
Sure.
Well, it's going to cost us money.
Sure.
So I guess the thing is, if we don't do it, that's the issue. That we have to, I think, understand it ourselves, to our taxpayers. If we don't do this, what's going to happen? And how do we get there?
Well, that's the
and who helps us for that?
That facility assessment, I think, would provide a big piece of that puzzle. And then you can show the rest of the folks in the county, this is what our current facility looks like. And this is what it's going to look like in 5 more years. And this is how much money we're going to have to sink into it in the next 5 years to get it up to standards.
Let alone not knowing that jail standards might shut it down, and you're going to do it. And it's going to cost you a lot of money.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, again, assuming 8 to 10 months for design, then we go into hiring the construction firm, if we didn't already bring them on board via design build or CM at risk, and then the construction of the facility. Again, I've got about 18 months in here. That's to accommodate right now the silly lead times on everything. Steel, all that stuff is way out. Generators, everything is way out right now. Electric panels, a year out on some big panels. Transformers, all that stuff. So, can that 18 months be shrunk up? Yes, it can, and we hope it will be. But again, not knowing yet whether it's going to be tilt wall constructions, load-bearing CMU, steel, we will be able to rein in that schedule once we get all those parameters.
What about having an options deal, Here we got right now, this is what we got right here. And then all the various options that's going to come into play. I mean, something's got to give. I mean, every day the jail gets worse. That's for sure. So what are the options that we have available? Some people would like to say, let's just keep riding this old horse until we can't go anymore. And that's what everybody would like to do, because nobody likes to spend money. I certainly don't want to have to spend money. But then again, we have an obligation. The county has no option but to jail their own inmates that are citizens of Hood County. That's what happens. If a citizen of Hood County gets arrested in Dallas, well, Dallas takes care of them while they're there, but still we have to pay their medical cost if they seek medical attention. That's still the deal, I mean, isn't it? I think so. Just what are the options? We need to, when you're doing this planning on the deal, I would like a real program that lets the citizens just get the true facts so they can know what we're doing, that we're not in the business of spending money. We're not in the business of helping the sheriff or giving Erica a better hotel here. We're just placing, what do we got to do? What are our bare bones options on here going forward?
We got other things to consider too. We got district judge. We got how fast these cases are coming through, how fast they're being processed. We have a new district judge. We have a fairly new district attorney. And there's flow issues that are all involved in this process as well that I don't have my hands around yet. But how long, that's like I asked you earlier today, how long, what's the average time a person's staying in this jail? When they're booked and how long they've been in there and why are they staying in there so long? And when I hear that somebody's going to trial that's out on bond, when they should be taking somebody on to trial that's in the jail and to process them through. And, those issues need to be addressed too. It's not just space, it's flow,
We've had a lot of conversations with Judge Buffkin, and he's actually kept up with me on how is he doing, and he's done a lot to get things moving. And the dockets went from single-page dockets for a day to 3 or 4 page dockets for a day, so he's getting them in as fast as he can. I'm trying to put the defense attorneys on notice, we gotta keep this thing going. Week before last, we got 29 off to prison. We got.
Was that part of that, excuse me, was that part of the 44 you told us
Yes, sir.
a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah, so we
Okay.
got 29 of them out. I think we got 23 convicted, ready to go. 2 of them have paper, so 21 we're waiting on paperwork to come from district attorney, or district clerk's office, so we can get the packets sent off to prison so they can get us a bed assigned so we can get them transferred out.
And
What's the
TDC
average,
is updated.
what's the average time when post-conviction from when they get convicted
Right.
until they actually go to Huntsville?
So they get sentenced in court, we now have to wait for their PIN packet to go over to Rania in the sheriff's office so she can send it to TDC. Forever, she's had to put that packet together and mail it to TDC. Well, now they're doing it more electronically. So it's a secured way to be able to, it takes 3 weeks to schedule somebody, it could take 10 minutes now. So we're working very, very hard with the state and the prison system as well to try to get these individuals that are ready, paper ready wise, into their system and scheduled a whole lot faster.
Well, I'm assuming what you're
now
doing
it's
is you're
waiting.
holding on to inmates once they're convicted, because you may have one convicted today, next week, or whatever.
Correct.
So you're holding them on to make it your transportation more cost effective by doing just one guy. You're trying to lump them into 3 or 4 or 5 going at the same time.
Yeah, we have transports every week, regardless of if it's one person or 15 people,
Okay, what's the average time frame though? A week?
a month.
Oh, a month?
Holding on to somebody before they go,
Yeah.
it could take up to a month before they go. That is mailing that packet to TDC.
Yeah.
Now that they're able to do it secured electronically, that could significantly go
Okay.
down. Now it's just a matter of, we also have to wait on the clerk's office to send us that PIN packet. And that, on average, could take
Basically, you have to merge
2
it how
weeks
fast they
before I get
process.
that.
Is what- yeah.
Okay, so you're talking about a month and a half from conviction until they're gone.
It can happen.
Okay.
That's if the state's taking them, because 3 weeks ago, when he had the 44,
They weren't taking any.
They weren't taking any.
they weren't taking anybody. I got involved because I called the governor's office and started talking to the people down there, and from Tuesday till Friday, it went from, no, we're not taking anybody, till they took one on Wednesday, and then on Friday, they said they're gonna take those 29. I mean, that's,
Has
just like
anybody
getting.
investigated billing the state back for those inmates on post-conviction for the time frame you as a county are holding on to them? Saying X amount, okay, we've held on to this offender who's convicted, he's awaiting movement, and it's costing us $55 a day to house him. Is anybody investigating billing back the state to recover on felon after he's been convicted?
Depending on how long, once the state receives their scheduling and they put them on the schedule, they're out of there pretty quick. But just recently is when they stopped doing large, because I was having 6 inmates leave every week, whenever they were sentenced. So it wasn't that big of a deal before. Obviously, they had that escape that happened with TDC, and they shut everything down for quite a long time to figure out their transportation stuff, and they had to fix what they had going on, which was understandable.
You might
Obviously, it was still
want
outside,
to, again, I don't know the feasibility, it's been years since I've been in on that side of the table, but you should probably check into that, because it reimburses the county. I don't know, again, it's been 12, 13 years, but I've been involved in corrections from a day-to-day operational standpoint, so I don't even know if that flexibility is even there still,
look into
but
it,
you may
yes.
want to check into it.
During COVID, we were able to get some money back when
Okay,
they
good.
weren't
Okay.
taking them. As of right now, they're not
They're not.
talking to us about reimbursing anything, but they are picking up the pace. To answer your questions, Commissioner Eagle, we've had, I think the other day I counted, I still got 23 that have been in jail over a year. Some of that's on motions that defense attorneys have filed or how they get it on that docket. I have no control over that. So Judge Buffkin is doing a great job compared to when he started, or better than what Judge Walton did too, and getting district attorney motivated, defense attorneys motivated. So I've got 23 that have been over a year in jail, but he has assured me that they're trying to get that work down. Some of those cases are murder cases, so that's the defense attorney and the district attorney coming to different agreements on different things and getting them to move forward. So I have no control over that, but that's, and you get those the ones that say the sheet that comes out every morning that has, where they're housed, what they're in for, at least the one charge.
Yeah, we're getting that.
Yeah, if you go over to the right-hand side, it tells how many days they've been in jail. So, yeah, I think there's 23 the other day when I counted it, over a year in jail. So.
You still got that one that's over 2? Okay.
I did a judgment earlier this week, Monday, Tuesday. Guy got 10 years TDC on a felony DWI. He had 556 days credit.
Are those pretrial felons, Jared?
I've had
Been over 4
12
years?
state jail felons released from our facility because of the time they have been in
Because
our
they did
jail.
12 months.
They've already done,
We sent
they
it
didn't
down
even go to
there,
state jail.
and they should have, some of them.
The state got off the hook on that one, didn't they?
Well, that's a ploy a lot of times too, is because the longer defense puts in these motions to keep them at the county for a
Well,
longer
they love
period of
being
time,
at the county.
it gets a better plea deal to go ahead and plead out. So sometimes it's to the advantage of the inmate to stay at the county level for a year
Well, but
Time served.
in pretrial.
But they still don't just get out, because we've already had that issue. They get told in court, they got 12 months, 364 days credit, or you'll be out by lunch. That stuff still has to go to the state, get calculated, and they send us something back saying,
It took a couple of days before that happens.
but I've had 12 just in this much of the year that have not gone to state jail and were released from here.
I'd like to get back to AGCM and ask a question. If we started this, and we can't make any decisions here today, but if we started this process and could get through finding out whether or not that jail is salvageable, what kind of contract do we have with you, and what is our cost to get started with it?
So you already have a contract with me, so you're good there. You have two things, you have two ways you can skin this. Either you can have us bring in the programming team under our contract, that way you don't have to put out a new solicitation.
Okay.
Or you can put out an RFQ, we can put out an RFQ on your behalf to bring on a programming firm or an architectural firm to help walk through the facility assessment and the program. So that would be the first step, is to.
And then if we determine then, nah, we're not gonna go any further, we're gonna continue shipping them out, and we don't wanna spend the money, this thing's gonna last, or it's gonna say, this thing's gonna fall apart, folks, you're in trouble. But if you don't do something in the next 4 or 5 years, you can get shut down, and you're gonna at least get that answer.
Yes, sir.
And then go forward from there.
Yes, sir. Yeah, so just very similar to what we're doing on the fire stations right now. You know, that first step is the facility assessment.
Right.
And that's what we're going through right now on the fire stations in the county. So we would do the same thing here, facility assessment, what's the condition of the building, what's it gonna cost to get it where it needs to be, and then, or is it even, worth it?
Yeah.
Yeah. But we can bring you those options, and then y'all have to decide what you wanna do.
Start, isn't it?
Yep, that's a start. And that's what this whole session was about, was to get a start.
I'm guessing that
Well,
facility
the side-
assessment is not gonna be the $5,000 that the fire department's
I mean, it's not gonna be bad. No, the facility assessment won't be bad. I mean, what we do is we bring in, and AGCN does facility assessments too. If y'all wanted us to do it, we could, but what we typically do is we'll bring in one of our mechanical engineers, one of our electrical engineers, one of our structural engineers, an expert in each trade. We'll have them come out and assess the building on each one of those things. And then we give you a report that's basically a green light, red light. This is everything that was okay, middle of the road. We score everything on a 1 to 5 system. So if it's a 5, it's great, no problem with it. If it's a 1, it is immediate replacement or non-functional. And so you get a report card basically on the whole health of the building. Everything from weatherproofing, you're talking about the wicking in of the moisture. So we look at the waterproofing of the building, we look at the drainage on the site, we look at the roof condition, the mechanical units, when are they going to have to be replaced, the plumbing, what kind of shape is the plumbing in, is there structural movement in the building, so all that kind of stuff.
Hey Jay, do you have drawings on the current jail, or do you have as-built by any chance?
I do not have as-built. I'll go through the drawings again to see if I can find drawings on the building.
You gave us one, we got one, I got one. It's not very detailed, but
It's not very detailed, but
we've got the one from that last meeting we had
yeah.
with the other architect.
I had
A lot of
I
that
think
was
it's good
built.
review.
yeah, I had a bunch that I gave to
TDC
Precinct
built,
2 commissioners
it
for
was
you.
kind of built on the
And
spot.
whatever happened to it, I'm not sure. I might
So you don't have electrical, plumbing?
Nothing like what I've got on.
I'll check my files.
So the whole blueprint,
Oh,
That
okay.
has the different layers for
yeah,
it.
it's got all,
So we should still have 1 or 2 copies of that.
We did it, oh, well,
Yeah, I guess we can put this on court. bring it to
Yes,
court,
we don't
see if
have-
want to move forward.
I think that's where we're at now.
Makes
So
it
that'd
good.
be-
Yep.
So,
And again, this was just to start the conversation and get, figure out a roadmap.
so we do have a copy of the plans
I think we've got one in the jail, may have two probably.
They want to optimize.
If there's any way we could get him a copy, he could get going on a proposal for the analysis.
That's like
It's about this tall.
Kathy and have her print out, run it through that printer over there.
Yeah, I'd like to take a look at that. If you've got, I'd like to look at it at some point.
I will look at it.
It's the full size one.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
I can-
48 inches.
Maybe not quite that big.
I agree with that.
Yeah?
Till next week.
Bill got it down to 100.
Just go take a picture of it.
Take
Take a picture of the.
You know, that's a big deal. I mean, it's a big deal, but it's very doable.
Crumbling around us.
That damn cash.
Anybody have anything else?
Copy also.
It's just gone.
I appreciate everybody coming and listening and discussing it, I think what matters is we can start somewhere, regardless of what that is, that's great. I wanted to bring information to you as to why it's a good idea to get more bed space and to help us out in that regard.
I do hope that Judge Buffkin takes a more aggressive move and has more trials.
Well,
and does
My
more.
court dockets have been,
Yeah,
20-plus people going to court at one time, and that's hard enough as it is.
yeah. Well, let's say he gets it down where we only have 140 people in jail. That still doesn't do anything about the condition that the jail's in.
Yep.
You still have Mark down there working full-time, am
All
I right?
kinds of aspects.
He's got another
Yes,
20
sir.
years.
We can save money there, if we can fix it before it runs.
You're still gonna have a maintenance guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just,
Automatic.
jail's just in bad shape.
Well, that's air conditioning.
And throw the towels in the, throw the towels
Let's
in.
see if I don't shut it,
Yeah,
save
they're
it.
britches.
Taking the toilet paper out of the beds.
Well, they quit doing
Like when they
that.
take.
Hey, I know this, every time the jail standards people come down there, and Eric and the sheriff called me up and says, come on down here, we gotta meet with the jail standards people. My whole heart starts beating out of my chest. I don't like that deal up there. Anyway, if no one has anything else, we're gonna go ahead and adjourn here at 10:53. Thank you all for coming.